All right. I have the real pleasure to be doing a show here with Abel James. He's a New York Times bestselling author, musician, podcaster, coach, and creator of Fat Burning Man and Wild Superfoods. And you've got a book, Designer Babies book.
Yeah,
And
designer
I
babies
was
still get scabies.
still get scabies.
That's right.
Uh, Real quick, what's that book about? Because you said I was supposed to get a copy, and then I did. I'm like, I don't know what happened. I was
It's
traveling.
probably someone stole it in the mail at some point. But this, I wrote it in 2019, and the way I'll sum it up is our friend, you probably know him, Justin Nault of Clovis. He said he has a quote in this from 2019, and it read like fiction. It's like humor, satire, little poems that read like songs a little bit, kind of like Shel Silverstein or Roald Dahl or Dr. Seuss, but I do it and flame the government. I flame patriarchy, and I kind of turn it into like an excuse for social activism. So in 2019, it read like a fiction book, he said. And I recently talked to him, and he says it reads like a nonfiction book in 2020, based upon some of the stuff in the world burning down all around us and the health. It's not like we didn't see some of this stuff coming, like
Yeah.
certain groups are definitely benefiting from this and have been planning on this the whole time.
What's been benefiting?
Certain powers that be from the top down, not anything. It's a little squiggly, right? It's hard to put
Yeah.
your finger on, but for little people like us who are creators, authors, coaches, we can tell that the squeeze is happening, and it was happening long before any sickness started going around. It's been going on for a long time, and the war against truth and just kind of like burying voices that are trying to say anything, activists who are overtly so, or even people who are just kind of like trying to say something that they think matters. Everyone's getting silenced. Everyone's getting buried now. And we're like, all right, this is happening. Who is doing this? And we're not exactly sure, to be
Yeah.
honest.
It's been really frustrating. You're absolutely right. As you're talking about this, I'm having memories over the years of like wanting speaking up and saying things, and then just watching it fall on deaf ears. And then also witnessing I don't know if you're friends with Rob Wolf or not, but
Yeah,
like
for sure.
Rob's fucking blog getting buried on Google results. Like he was ranking really well for a long time, and
Yep.
then and he is one of the premier guys for nutrition for the whole world. Like just like
Yeah.
how to have global sustainability and feed everybody. He's one of
Dude.
the primary thinkers on that, and his shit's getting buried. And
Yes.
and uh witnessing stuff like that, and you go, well, I don't know who's in charge of that. On like you're saying, it's like who are the they, right?
Right.
And I think you and I are alike in that there's a lot of digging, there's a lot of reading, there's a lot of going in there and going, the way that most people are behaving is not in alignment with what is creating everything. It's like everyone,
Yeah.
there's a lot of there. You were saying this before the call, is before we got on. It's like referring to us as pawns, or being people being pawns.
Yeah.
And it the more I learn and the more I understand, the more that becomes obvious.
Mm-hmm.
It's beyond the point of I believe something's going on. It's like no, it's fucking obvious, but I'm not really sure exactly, like you're saying, who it is.
Yeah.
What's
And
Go ahead.
dude, to your point, Rob Wolf is a personal friend, a collaborator. He's been on my show. I've been on his. I loved his books. Even, as I was getting a start, I really look up to the guy. And for the past year, as my wife and I have been working our asses off, I haven't heard a peep from Rob Wolf. Even though I follow him on every single social account there is, he's been so buried. The same thing has happened to us. So as this is all happening, Rob was talking about censorship. He was talking about shutting down his own podcast and having to start over and do all this other stuff. We were taking a bunch of hits ourselves, didn't know that it was happening to Rob because he was so buried, and vice versa. So like, that's
Yeah.
how dangerous and pernicious this is. And one of the most concerning things is how coordinated it has been across different social media platforms that are supposed to represent separate companies, private ones, even some of them, right?
Yeah.
And on top of that, when I started posting about censorship and shadow banning really hard a few weeks ago, all of a sudden these people in Brazil, in various parts of Europe, South America, Australia, the UK, this is happening everywhere at exactly the same time in all these different countries. And I find that a little bit suspect. The people, this was really funny when I posted about it. I don't speak Portuguese. I have a little bit of Spanish, but like, so down in Brazil, like there's a following for not just me, but a lot of people kind of in our space. And I've had the fortune to meet some of those people in person, and they're really awesome people. But this Brazilian doctor referenced my post about censorship, and she said that she thought that I stopped putting anything out years ago because she hasn't heard anything from me, even though I've done over 100 shows, in the past just like year or two. And so she just had this big long post about it, and I did my best to try to figure it out. And after that happened, and people kind of caught on, this like army of Brazilian doctors and like health people start following me, even though we don't even speak the same language. And I just like, in a really dark time, I found that incredibly powerful, because the more people who know what's happening, the more we can band together and start doing some good work, because that's what needs to be done right now. Not more misinformation and top-down media fear mongering. We need real work to be done right now, and we have to build our way out of this as communities.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's a battle of information, how it's being disseminated, and which information gets out. There was, when this whole COVID thing started going down, I started, digging as usual. And, there were some people who were creating videos and putting out information where I was like, doesn't sound exactly right, but they're questioning things.
Yes.
Questioning things. And then I remember watching this one video that was shared like this. It kept on getting taken off of YouTube, is what was the rumor was being passed around. I was like, hey, watch this before it gets taken down.
Right.
And then that was reposted in Instagram TV. So I'm watching this Instagram TV that was posted from YouTube, and I was like, man, this really interesting point. It's basically someone who's saying, hey, we should probably be taking better care of the planet if we want to have a healthy environment to live in.
Right.
And which makes complete and total common sense. And there was a couple things he said in there. Was like, he might be reaching a little bit, but I went to go share it with another friend, and it wasn't there 12 hours later.
Exactly.
And it was like, it was in my DMs, and it was like the DMs didn't even occur.
Exactly.
So it didn't say it was taken away. It just wasn't there anymore. And that was a little freaky. Like if they were just saying this was taken down because but they didn't even give a reason. It's just gone.
Yep.
And, we saw Alex Jones get taken off of everything. Was it a year or two ago?
Yeah. Which is a whole other thing. We can get
and Alex, I think when shit happens to a guy like Alex, everyone's kind of like, like he's so inflammatory and aggressive that like it's easy for people to dislike him. So when he got taken down, we're like, it's like, that sucks. Like I don't think that it should be. I don't always agree with him, or I think he's a little aggressive on how he approaches things, and he makes some leaps. But you shouldn't be banning that, and that's the beginning of a problem.
Yeah, and I do think that was theater. I think he's controlled opposition. There's a lot of evidence that says so. And the way that censorship works is that you don't get more public exposure and more media coverage for being censored. At least that's not what happened for me and Rob. So from where I'm standing, it's a little suspicious when these people get enormous amounts of media coverage. The media doesn't cover people unless they have skin in the game. They really do not. Having been on that side of the media on a reality TV show, they don't cover you unless they have skin in the game and something to gain from it. So that was super suspicious from where I was standing. And so I'm not a big fan of Rogan getting in bed with Alex Jones and being the face of censorship, the face of shadow banning, and getting hundreds of millions of dollars at the same time. It's like, that's not the people who are really doing solid work out there and trying to, yes, question things, but also stick to the research and the truth. They're the ones who are getting buried Not Alex Jones. He's doing fine. David Icke is doing fine. You know, all these
They are
political
doing
clowns
fine.
and billionaires, they're
Yeah.
doing better than ever. And it's absurd.
Yeah. So what do you think is, all right, so we actually have two major things happening
At
in the
least,
country right now. Uh and it's really interesting. This this is such a like everything that's happening is like I want to put things on Instagram about it, but I really have a hard time.
yes.
For me, it's like okay, things need to be acknowledged because I think as leaders, it's good to let people know like I am present to what's happening, but also um, for me, it's being responsible with what I'm saying and not making more of a problem and actually creating a solution. Because I think
Yeah.
most people are posting on Instagram, Twitter. It's like they're just causing more issues,
Yep.
and it's so much more complex than that. And people don't want
Yeah.
to hear that because people don't want to have to read. They don't want to have to listen to a long podcast. But that's why we're here. We do the long format makes a difference.
It does.
Yeah, but so we're all locked inside. We're all locked inside, and then this whole this thing happens with uh George Floyd, and the everyone's online, everyone's in more introspection, more reflection. I think people are already upset a bit. This happens, and now we have what we have. Do you think that this was like there's two things I'm thinking about this is I think that everything that's happened with COVID is a big it psyops. It's like
Yeah.
I think the media really took advantage of something, clung on to it, and spun it up. Politicians are responding in ways that don't make any sense to people who understand health.
Yep.
This doesn't make any sense. Um, and then do you think that what's happening with the riots and everything is that an addition to, or do you think that this was a surprise to?
It's part of the plan. It's
Yeah.
definitely part of the plan. Look at all the bricks that they're literally planting in different cities. Look at how the people who are committing the atrocities during these riots, setting things on fire,
Can you
you know,
talk about the bricks real quick? Because I saw a post about that the other day.
yeah, and who knows how true any of this stuff is, but from what I've seen it happen enough times from a bunch of different directions that just pallets of bricks are being dropped off in cities where riots are happening. Even not big cities, you know, this is happening too. Dropped off at places where there's no construction. Obviously, during the lockdowns, construction's a whole different thing. People are paying attention to who's around them, where work's being done. And if a bunch of bricks show up for riots, something's going on. And like, think about all of the groups and people who would benefit from social unrest, violence, and destruction. But just like I saw a bunch of videos from Austin, you know, where I spent like 10 years of my life, where I met my wife. I love that city. And I saw videos of these guys dressed up like ninjas, you know, completely covered so you can't see who they are. Seemed like they definitely have some sort of military training, you know, climbing up poles, setting things on fire. And that's not what the people of Austin who are out there protesting, and I've been to protests before in Austin, I have never seen anything like that. And that shit is happening in every city at the same time. That image straight out of the Joker movie or the Batman movie, while everyone looks like Bane or acts like Joker's thugs, or the police state that you see in that movie, the memes of all the cars on fire in all these different cities at the same time on one exact night is not an accident. It's not. I'm a theater kid. You know, I grew up in that world. I've been on the other side of the stage for a long time. And when certain things play out in front of your eyes, you can kind of tell when it's a reality show if you do a little bit of digging. And when you do some digging into, okay, think about the things that are censored right now and think about the things that the traditional fear-based media is putting out. And I didn't see that murder on public television, you know, like I didn't see that censored. I didn't see, in fact, I saw that shoved in everyone's face all at the same time. And then we saw an African-American reporter be arrested on live television during a media broadcast. I don't think that was an accident either. They didn't bury that. They amplified that. So the things that are being amplified, not like they didn't happen. Not like they didn't happen, not like a murder didn't occur, but the fact that it is all playing out on television essentially, or on social media, on some sort of virtual communication device, I have a very hard time believing the things that are pushed in our face, while I know that the truth is often being buried. And the peaceful people are out there and they're doing good things right now. The ones who are getting all of the attention are the controlled opposition on both sides of this, and I believe there are bad actors on the cop side. There are bad actors who are burning our cities down. And these are not our people. These are not our people who are taking a knee while they're getting blasted with tear gas,
Yeah. What I asked this question early on in COVID on Facebook, and I think I actually gave too much. I made too big of a post. I think I should have been more simple about it, because I was pointing out reasons why I think this is a distraction, and then people wanted to fight me about
Yeah.
the reasons versus what I was trying to do was bring attention to. Even it is like I'm not,
I
I'm
think I
not,
saw
and
that post.
yeah, I'm not even in denial. Yeah, I'm not even in denial about what's going on. It's actually a share from Mike Geary, and then I added my own little.
Yeah, I remember. Yep.
Yeah, and I'm like, fuck, man, that post did not do anything that I wanted it to do. Like
Yes.
it,
Because Facebook only shows it to the wrong people, right? They only show it to the people who are going to get pissed off and try to flame you, because they're dividing us to get our attention.
yeah. So like what I noticed is people's minds gravitated towards the fact that I was questioning the reality of some of these things or the statistics or whatever. I was like, fuck, forget all that. Even if all this is true, then, but it's still who's benefiting from this. Like,
I know that the elites and bankers and the Fed just printed themselves another $3 trillion while all this was happening, and while they were prohibiting us from gathering together and protesting. That is not an accident either.
I think it's important to point out that the way that people, like you said, the elites, people, the bankers, the people who, the way they view money is not the same way that most people view money.
No, because they create money out of nothing.
Yeah. So like the average person lives in, I say most people, 99.99% of the humans live in this thing where there's this, the way that their relationship to money is it's from scarcity. It's this situation where I gotta have it. I was listening to a guy recently who said it really well. I was like, money is the number one religion in the world. And and
Jesus
if you
wouldn't have liked that.
Yeah, and if you want to question that, it's like, how much of your attention, how much of your action, how much of your behavior is dedicated to getting more dollars? And usually the people who have the least amount of dollars are the most focused on it.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are like, I don't have enough. I've got to work this job. I got to work 12 hours. Why? Oh, so I can make that money. And not because they love their work, not because of any of that, but they're the slaves to it. But a lot of people who are on that end of the spectrum think that people who, are doing well are slaves to it, when it's really flipped a lot of times. I'm not saying that there are wealthy people who, there's a lot of wealthy people who are slaves to it, but the way the people you're talking about, they're playing a completely different game. It's not a worship of money. They're using money as a tool for power.
Yeah.
But what do you think? I mean, we say it's hard to put the pin on who's doing what. What's your impression of what, like they, or who are they, and like what do they have to gain from all of this? Because when we're inside it, it's tough to see, because we're inside it.
Okay, so look around. Look who's getting poorer because of this. Small businesses are being totally crushed right now. Minorities, working class people, the middle class is turning into the working class, and the poor, that's shrinking. Even the upper class people, like $1 million used to be a lot of money. We've done well on our business and we've made multiple in sales, millions of dollars. But that's not enough money to even run a small business for multiple years and pay your employees and all of that. The people who are getting these bailouts, even on the small business side, are the ones who are shadier and scammier. You know, I'm seeing money that's coming go to all of the wrong people at the same time. But anyway, the last time we had big protests on Wall Street, the Occupy movement, was because there was a widening divide between the rich and the poor. The elites are more powerful than ever. They have one set of rules for us that they enforce with the police state now by firing on our own people. And they have a separate set of rules for the politicians, for the billionaires, and all of the other people who are out there who have some sort of in with the 0.0001%, right? But Occupy as a movement never went away. And the reason for that never went away. And what the Fed and the bankers did was print their way out of that. And for a lot of people, you know, myself included, I didn't know a fucking thing about what money was and how the financial system worked. Even after being valedictorian, graduating high school in 3 years, and then going to an Ivy League college and being a senior fellow with honors there, still had no idea how any of this works. But if you look into books, history, there have been multiple Federal Reserves. Our fiat currency system has crashed multiple times, and the founding fathers are rolling in their graves because the way that money controls us now is their worst case scenario. The fiat money system, what that means is that those dollars that you have, you know, in paper money or in digital accounts are all imaginary and based on nothing except for the United States military force, you could say, or the petrodollar, which is a whole other, you know, all of these words that I'm saying, like, read the books about these things because they're all very complicated and difficult to understand. But our monetary system is controlled by people who print unlimited quantities of it in debt. Essentially, we have over $25 trillion of debt. That's basically the taxpayer's responsibility, but all the taxpayers are broke, and all of our social security systems are broke in the future. And so now we're coming to a head of the end of the many years of being in a fiat money system that's based on nothing, not gold, not silver, not any sort of actual real asset. And so in all these countries, you know, how much does your dollar buy you, or your $1,000 or your $1 million, compared to 10 years ago or 20 years ago? Because it's been cut in half at least. Look at the price of education, the price of anything that you buy at the grocery store, the price of your house, the price of land, taxes have all skyrocketed for no reason. And now the world is on fire, and bankers have printed themselves another $3 trillion on top of the rest of this. And when they do that, they dilute what your money in your bank account is worth and what your salary brings you and what your salary
people get upset about
employees.
People get upset about taxes, but I'm like, look at the fucking printing. Like, you may be paying 30% taxes.
It's a bigger
but you're
deal.
paying another like 20 or 30%.
Taxes, tariffs, inflation. They lie about the numbers. It's completely imaginary. The inflation numbers that we're given are a joke. Go to the grocery store, buy a house. You'll see what I'm saying. Look at the price of, look at the debt that people are carrying for their college education. It's absurd.
They're saying inflation is a few percent, or, you know, 1.5%. But
no,
yeah, you're right. When you look at gas, food, and real estate, it's more like a 200% over the last decade, really. I was looking at houses recently, and if you look at prices from, and I know, you know, there are booms and busts, all that shit, but you look at 2012 prices compared to 2020 prices, they're double.
Yeah,
they're double.
I mean, my house in Austin, when I lived there, I bought it in 2009, and I looked in the 90s. It was, I think, a dude bought it for his daughter who was going to the University of Texas, because it was like 89 grand for this house, which is a crappy house built in the 50s. Needed a ton of work when I moved in there. I bought it for 294. I sold it for 440 a few years later, paid a crap ton, like paid everything in taxes and to my lawyer, like should have made money, but didn't, because that's kind of how that works. And then it went up to 700 or 800,000. I don't think it sold for 800, but it sold for like 650, 700. And the taxes, because of that, went up to over 20 grand a year for that crappy little starter house. And that's a spicy
Interesting.
tomato, man.
Yeah,
That's
I mean, some of that's supply and demand. Some of that's, there's limited inventory in a city that's booming, but not that much. Not
no,
that much. And
no.
and the
You need
houses
to
I'm
eat.
looking at I'm looking in Tahoe right now.
Yeah.
And it's not like it's not a boom town. There's not that many more people here than there were a decade ago.
Yeah. I mean,
And
everything's a boom town
yeah,
in
the
prices,
prices
though.
are still shifted.
Yep. That's not
Yeah.
an accident. It's because our money isn't worth anything. And the reason it's not worth anything is because they keep creating all this fake debt and then selling all these mortgages. They never stopped doing all the things that caused the problems, back in the 2009, 2010 crash and that whole thing. It's not what it seemed like it was. It kept going. It kept
Yeah.
going. And if anything, now the bankers even just have more of a free ride. And this divide between the rich and the poor is what collapses societies. And if you look at your dollar and you don't trust it anymore because it won't buy you anything, that's when the whole system really collapses. And that's, I think, what we're really seeing. And this was going to happen, but you needed some sort of red herring or some sort of distraction to be like, oh, check this thing out. That's how magic works, right? They're like, look
Yeah.
over here while they do
Yeah.
this over here. And it's not a mystery that's exactly what tyrannical powers do. And that's what we have.
Yeah. This, when we were there for 2007, 2008, and then there was that recession, and I mean, I started a business in 2007. I started a gym and I did okay. Like,
Yeah.
I survived, I made it, all that stuff. I totally realized that some people were suffering and all that. And living through that, I don't actually think it was that bad, but like living through that and started really triggered in me to learn more. I go, why the fuck is this happening? And I
Yeah.
started looking more into it and I go, oh, this always happens.
Mm-hmm.
These are booms and busts and cycles. And so I go, okay, well, when's the next one? Because we had one in '01 and we had one in '07 and we had, it's like, it's like
Yeah.
every
Three
fucking
depressions in
decade.
the 1800s. It's not new. This stuff happened.
No. Yeah. And so I'm looking at it and I go, okay, well, I just need to prepare for the next one. And
Mm-hmm.
so, like, I'm fine.
Yeah.
And so I like to remind people of that, of like, when I'm talking about these things, when I'm interested in these things, like if I only cared about myself, I wouldn't say shit. I wouldn't be putting this kind of stuff out.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to
It's more
say,
dangerous than it appears. People are
yeah,
just like, oh, look at you saying stuff. You should be out there with your feet on the ground. And it's like, this shit is real. There have been attempts on our life. And I'm not kidding. Like, this is for real. And if you get up and you speak out, that's why I have so much respect for people who are doing it right now, because it's not for the people, especially who have a following and a platform. They're not just running their mouth. Most of them, they know the responsibility right now. And though we all can't talk about the same topics with the same degree of authority or expertise, it's important that we all be encouraged to ask questions and have these long form conversations with each other. Like you, Mike, you're one of my favorite people to talk to. I've told you that before. But we know that this matters, and we've had high stakes conversations before, and we take this seriously. And it's important that anyone out there, even if you don't have a huge following, take this seriously right now.
yeah. This is, I've been very careful, especially I've been careful the last few months about how I post. Like before before everyone was upset and online constantly,
Yeah.
I could make a post here and there. And if I was a little off,
Yeah, you would
not a
run your
big
mouth
deal.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I
now
would too.
I'm like, fuck, man. Everyone is, their stress level is extra high.
Yeah, big
Everyone's
time.
extra sensitive, easy to trigger, go into old patterns,
Yep.
fall into belief patterns that they inherited from their parents, whether they're conscious of it or not.
Mhm.
And which is basically that a mentality of submission.
Yeah.
And so I've been very careful to, like, where I'm at right now is, I think it's important for people to see us, or they want us to just acknowledge that there's some fucked up shit happening. And I, so I'm sitting here, I'm going, this is such a complex issue.
Yeah.
And I recognize for myself that I've studied a lot, but I still need to study more. There's more that I need to understand if I can make a positive comment on something. Can I say or post something that's going to make a difference? Right now, where I'm sitting is acknowledgement is good. Um, and but it's complex. I think people don't want the truth because it's work. And
It
most people
is.
don't want to work to find what's actually going on. And so they hear us and I can tell who they're like, fuck these guys. I'm going to go watch
We're
CNN.
not even looking at the comments, and I know exactly what's happening right now.
Well, okay. How about this? Look at this. This is something that a lot of my friends have been posting around is these health officials in these different cities look
Yeah.
like total dog shit.
Dude.
They look like Skeletor or they're fucking 400 pounds. Who are you? Who put you in charge?
Oh
That shit
man.
pisses me off. Look, we're our background is health. That's like
Yeah.
we have a lot of backgrounds, but I look at that, I'm like, nobody can argue with that. If you want to tell me that this 300-pound woman is going to tell me what to do for my health, you can go fuck yourself.
Dude,
It's
that lady
crazy.
from LA looked like she was rotting at the bottom of the fucking ocean for 3 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like she comes out on stage all frail and telling us what to do with our health and to stick ourselves with science juice because, like, trust us, we're the government and we're here to help. Fuck that, man. Fuck that.
Dude. This is why I love guys like Paul Chek.
Yeah.
The fucking dude,
Yeah.
like, he'll go to a health conference and people are debating him and he's like, he just takes his shirt off. Like, like, come on. Like, because that's, I was watching this guy recently. He was saying, you know what wisdom is? Wisdom is knowledge meets understanding meets action.
Yeah.
And what we have is a bunch of fools running things because they have taken no action. Yeah, they may have read something. They did a study. They worked in a lab, but look at their life. There's no wisdom. And when there's no wisdom, that's folly. So you got a bunch of people just following a bunch of fools around. And
or puppets, because there's a revolving door between big food and government, between big oil and government, between technocrats and government, and all these lobbyists own the politicians. All these elites own the competition. So when was the last time you voted against tear gas? When was the last time you voted against GMOs? Because I have never seen that on the ballot, and that's what I want to see. This is what we have to start standing up for and say, as soon as you start using our tax dollars to shoot guns at our own citizens, we have to be able to vote against that. Because looking up at all these clowns, these establishment clowns who have been running the circus for all these years, that's not a solution. They are not our savior. They're not going to help us. They never cared about us to begin with. We need to do this ourselves. And to your point, I mean, like, while we're ranting, like these health people, like Rob Wolf, like you, like last time I saw you, you did a fucking backflip in front of me. You know what I mean? Like I want you in front of the microphone telling people about what a responsibility health it is, and also how health is a survival skill. And the people who know the most in some ways, not every way, but like the people who are on the hook, who have to know about the immune system and how it works, are athletes. They're the ones who are always gunning it. After you run a marathon or you do a big athletic event or during training, your immune system is kind of the thing that takes the beating. And if you don't pay attention to that, you're not going to be a good athlete and you're not going to survive. And so, like, burying these people and calling them all meatheads while we have Skeletor out there fucking running the world is not going to work anymore.
Yeah. I mean, this is why I like the biohacking crowd to a degree.
You can't use that word anymore because it'll shadow ban you.
Are we not allowed?
You'll get censored for it. Yeah, we're not allowed. It's one of those other words we're not allowed to say.
So, we got to create a new word now. What is it?
Oh, that's a good point. It's getting harder and harder because, like, the list of words is just
some 1984 shit going on here. Fucking
it's exactly
nuts.
what they warned about. Ignorance is strength.
Yeah.
double think, you know,
Yeah.
wear masks, don't wear masks, go outside, don't go outside, get back to work, don't get back to work. That sounds like double think to me, and double speak too. All these words are totally fucked up. What does fake news mean? This is why I wrote this book, because words are weaponized and they can be used against the powers that be, though, right back at them. And so we need to get real clear about what we're talking about when we use words, because social media and the powers that be have on purpose turned all of these words into little trigger words that mean different things, different people, and set them off. And that is extremely damaging to our democracy and to our free thought.
Yeah. 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 What um are you following anything with the meat market or the food market? Have you
Yeah.
been hearing about any of this?
Our food system is under attack. They are
Yeah, what's
forcing
happening
people to pour it
from what
out.
you've been looking at? Because I've been looking at I was hanging out with my buddy AJ Richards, who is his whole family's in ranching in Utah, and he was talking to a bunch of different farmers. He got deep into it, and I found out, I think right before it started getting publicized, that he was talking to a farmer that was euthanizing all of their pigs
Right.
because of the way the system works. Is like I, I I don't know exactly the details of it, but they're basically, a lot of farmers are having to euthanize their animals right now. So
While
when
people are
things pick,
starving.
yeah, like there's already a gap, but what I picked up on is maybe in 6 months it's going to be even worse. What is your take on everything that's happening in the food system?
They are attacking our food system, forcing dairy farmers to pour out their milk, forcing farmers to kill their pigs, cattle, all sorts of different animals. Chickens are being culled. Wow, millions of people are being starving. It's not an accident. They're just turning up the heat on us. And when you take away people's rights and you take away their food, you cause social unrest. And the powers that be want war right now. That's what it seems like. They want to drive us to war, because when you look at history and the cycles of history, what's happened, the actions that are being taken by the people who are squandering their power right now are exactly the same ones that lead us all to war and suffering. So if we want this to stop, it's time to stand up now and not let this happen. And so I've seen examples of dairy farmers, like they did in the Depression. One of the last times they were told to get rid of all of their food that could have helped people. I've seen in various places these small towns come together and say, fuck no, I'm not going to pour out all my milk while people in my town can't eat. And so they get in touch with the people in town and they work it out. And the whole federal government is fucked anyway. We don't need them. We don't need them to tax us to, exchange our goods in local communities. And so that's exactly what they did. They came up with their own little token system like farmers markets do. And people lined up at the farmer's place and got their milk and dairy products. And that's exactly like, isn't that common sense? Why the fuck is that illegal? We need to stop this right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting federal laws around food that make it very difficult to get
Yes.
food from a farmer. And I was finding out that as I was talking about getting some cattle in Utah. I was like, okay, if I wanna, or I was talking about helping my friend sell some meat online and all this stuff, and started looking into it. And I was like, they don't even have enough butchers in the
Right.
area to do it. I was like, how the fuck are they getting the meat to the stores? And I was like, oh well, they put them on a train or a truck, and they ship all the cattle from Utah. A lot of the cattle, I won't say all of them. A lot of the cattle to the East Coast
Mm-hmm.
to go through these mass processors where everything just goes into one place. It's centralized, and then it gets dispersed back out to all the stores. And I was like, holy shit. And then basically, if it's very difficult to have a legal butcher operation, it's got to be USDA
Yep.
qualified and all that kind of stuff, and then have one of that magnitude. So like there was like 2 or 3 butchers in town, and they could process a cow a day. But yeah, the structures don't exist for local food right now. What do you think is
Yeah.
going to happen? What do you think is going to happen with that? Are people going to step up, or do you think that something else is going to happen? The government's going to come in and do something, or the banking system's going to come in some way,
Yeah.
and
Government's going to try. They
they're
have
going to
been
try.
taking control of our food system this whole time, making it harder and harder for small farmers, for small producers, and people who have small little ranches and operations that they, operate within their own community. So like I'm thinking of an example in Austin, who was our favorite guy who had this charcuterie. Essentially, he was French, and he had duck eggs, pâtés, blood sausage, which sounds disgusting, but it was the
Oh,
best
it's so
sausage I've
good. I
ever
love
had in my
blood sausage.
life. This guy was a master and just like the nicest guy. And this was, I don't know, 2014, 2015. We went, you probably remember, we were running around the globe like you. And so we left Austin for a few months. And when we came back to the farmer's market, we're like, man, where's Sebastian? And they're like, I don't know. He had to shut down. The powers that be came in, and they said that he had to install $20,000 worth of equipment within 2 weeks, or else he had to shut down forever. And so I was able to look it up afterwards, and he had this whole kick. This was all while I was gone for just like a month or two, and he had this Kickstarter, and he raised a few thousand, but not enough to do it, and then had to shut down, leave town. No one ever heard from him again. And is that really what you want? Is that really what you want out of your food system? Because that didn't happen now. This happened years ago, and it's been illegal for us to buy raw milk from our farmers unless we say that it's for our dog in multiple states that we've lived in. And the dog fucking loves it, because I can't legally say that I loved it, because I would never touch it. It's illegal to have raw milk. What? How?
Yeah.
How did they ever get control of this shit? Because, by the way, I've worked with the federal government for many, many years. I don't anymore, but I used to. And they don't serve the people. They do not serve the people. And anyone working in these organizations from the top down who are not serving the people right now need to step down. Like all of these taxes do go somewhere. All this money printing does go somewhere. And these people are not serving us. They are public servants, and they need to remember that. So all of these things that are happening now that we're all living in a surveillance state, even those people who are in these positions of power, and especially those people, will be held accountable for every single thing that is happening right now. All of these people who are dying of illness, of being locked in their houses, of mental illness, of rioting, of police brutality, of these other crimes that are being committed, like all of these people will be held accountable. So I think it's important that we realize that, because it seems like a really dark time and all these things are out of our control, but we will not forget.
Yeah. The one thing I like to keep in mind anytime I start talking about government is government's number one concern is that it sustains itself.
Yes.
And you can see this because the way politicians behave. They're so concerned about the next election cycle. So it's all about survival. So the government's trying to survive. That's number one. And then everything else is number 2, 3, 4, 5. So when you look at the government being of service to the people, it only is of service to the people after it figures out how to sustain itself. Yes. And I think it has a hard enough time just doing that.
Yeah. And it's not like, I don't want to say that everyone obviously working in the government is a bad person. Of course, that's not the case. There are good and bad people everywhere. My point is that yes, we need government. We need some sort of rules, but I do believe that comes best from the bottom up, not the top down. And we're starting to see that all of these militarized police forces and all of these tanks and Humvees that they're rolling in, and all these rocket launchers and all these politicians and all of these elections are not helping anything. What we really need to be doing is growing food right now, because the grid will probably go down. It's not like I'm some sort of conspiracy theorist or I think that the world is going to go to hell. It's just obvious that that's going to happen at some point. When you look at the 1800s and even just the way that the universe and solar system works, the Carrington event knocked out the grid way back then. And we know that that could easily happen again and will happen again because it's cyclical. And that's just one example. Like there are other examples of being hacked or attacks. And it's like, now that we're all completely reliant on virtual communication, now that, more of our monetary system works that way, and none of it works if the power goes out or the internet goes out, that's a giant susceptibility. And other countries, other powers that be know this. And so that's going to be something that we're going to have to deal with. So ask yourself out there, are you ready to be locked in your house for another many months with civil unrest and no power? And so that's kind of how we're handling some of this is, okay, things could get better in the next few weeks and months and years. Could have a great election and like a great guy's in there and saves everything, or shit could get even more fucked up. And if it does, you got to be ready. So the people who are being buried and the people who are being attacked right now for questioning and speaking out and all of that, they're, from where I'm standing, a lot of them are doing the right thing and banding together as communities, getting back in touch with people who they love, who they trust, and asking them what they think is going on and what we can do to fix it. And so the way I see it is the less attention we give all of these federal clowns and the more attention we give people in our own communities, whether that's, geographically a community or a community of people across the world, it's important that we focus on those people who are going to help us through this whole thing and build our way out of it, not focus on the top down anymore, not give them any more power than they're already squandering.
Yeah. What are you doing specifically? So you look at this and go, okay, the food supply may get fucked up, or it is getting fucked up. And, are you stocking up on food? Are you gardening? What's the deal?
Yeah. We're gardening. It's hard. We live at 8,000 feet. It's really sandy soil, gets super cold. And so you can lose crops really easily to that short growing season. But at the same time, you can grow shit inside too. And it's a great time to what bears do when they try to fatten up is they go after the most caloric, fattiest stuff. And so you can do that in a dirty way or a clean way. The way that we're doing it is focusing on things, like coconut oil and nut butters, stocking up, but getting bulk nuts, because these are things that would be really hard to grow, right? Like growing fat, super hard. Getting animal foods, really difficult to do. So those are from like a food point of view, that'll last you a few months. But if you want to eat for a while, you have to learn how to forage or grow yourself. So if we're talking like civil unrest turns into something worse, or we lose the grid, or we even just lose, the trucks stop coming to the grocery stores. We've already seen this happen. We know that food runs out pretty quick. I don't know how you get through that. You can't do it by yourself. There's this idea, I think, because of all these stupid reality TV shows about these survivalists, that they all have all these guns in these huge pits underground or whatever, and that's how they're going to survive for years. And they're crazy because of that. And they are crazy if they think they're going to get by on their own. That's not how this is going to work.
You're going to get by in a bunker with a bunch of MREs and canned
It's
food.
not going to happen.
Not the way to do it.
Not going to happen.
Yeah.
So we have to get through it as communities. We all have to, I'm getting in touch with people who live here and being like, this is what we have. This is what the value we can provide. And we're happy to. And people in exchange have been like, well, I have way too much lettuce, and in 2 weeks I'm going to have just like a shitload of basil, and we can't eat all this basil. So come over, bring us some of your like omega supplements, and we'll give you some basil. I'm like, that's great. Of course. That's another thing. It's stocking up on nutrients. That'll be another thing that's really hard to get. So things like vitamin D, vitamin C, greens, spirulina, chlorella, a high quality source of protein. Those are other pieces that we're stocking up on. Anything that can last on the shelf without power, camping foods. We've been living this way for a long time. We love camping and go on road trips a lot. So it's kind of like that. It's like going on a boat trip for fucking months or whatever. You better be stocked up and ready to fish.
Yeah. I mean, I was planning on moving out of the city months ago before any of this hit. Yeah. And then I was going to travel a little more for another year. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to move more out into the country. And then all this hit, and I go, well, I guess and I had Tahoe on my radar. So I'm up here now, and
good on you.
it's a different vibe up here altogether, away from, there's no tension here. People are doing their thing. And, I've been thinking about I don't know if you follow carnivore stuff at all, or Paul Saladino. So I got to be friends with Paul, and I had an opinion about things. And then after meeting him and hanging out and eating a bunch of raw organ meat with him, I was like, oh, Okay, I see
I
what's
get what you're
going on
doing
here.
here. Yeah, I
I
have the
see
same
this now.
thing. The same
So
thing.
now I'm like, uh, now I'm of the mindset of like, okay, get back into hunting. I hunted when I was in like high school. This is the
Yeah.
last time I hunted. I was like, okay. And one of my buddies, he's organizing hunting trips this year. Okay, okay,
Cool.
I'm gonna go hunting. I've got to learn how to gut a deer all over again. I don't
Yeah.
remember any of that.
Yeah. I
They're like,
don't even know how to gut a fish anymore. It's like you got to keep these skills up, you know? You
yeah,
really do.
yeah. So it's like, okay, where I live, hunting is probably the best way to stay fed.
Yeah.
If everything goes down the way we're talking, it could possibly go down. And eating the organ meat is a great way to get all your nutrients. So I'm looking at hunting, or if I'm not killing enough, then end up just buying half a cow, or getting enough freezer space
Yeah.
to do that. And you're talking about the possibility of not having power. Like
Yeah. So that's a
how do you
big fucking barbecue right there. And there's
yeah,
nothing
so
you can
that's
do about
so for me,
that.
it's like, yeah, for me, I'm like, all right, I got freezers, but they got to be powered. But I also
Yeah.
live, it stays pretty cold. Uh,
Yeah.
so there's like all these different solutions, but none of this would be possible living in the city. And
Right.
what we have right now is we have more people living in cities
Hmm.
than ever in human history. There's this huge centralization of people. And when all this went down, I actually went to Utah for 2 months and just
Okay.
stayed out on some land. I was like, oh, there's a worldwide disease spreading at record breaking rates. I'm getting the fuck out of here. And
Yeah.
people are going, oh, I'm going to stay in the city. People stay in LA. I go, look, if it's as bad as they're saying, I'm not saying it is, but if it's as bad as the media was making it out to be, I don't want to be in the city. I don't think you should be either. And people stuck it out. And I don't think it was as bad. It hasn't been as bad as they're making it out to be.
Yeah.
More
Not that
stats
part.
come out. Yeah, not that part. The media definitely spun it all up.
Yep.
Uh, so yeah, in this conversation, I'm thinking again, being in the city, how can that work? Can people do gardens in the city and get
Well, you
enough food
definitely
with
need your
that many
community.
people?
Yeah, you definitely need your community in the city. I don't know. I think there are too many people. That's one of the reasons we left Austin, is because when there are too many people in the same space, they start acting differently. You know, we're animals. We can't forget that. And out here, in rural Colorado, we really like it. People, like you said, are pretty laid back. They're prepared because, like, we get big snowstorms in June sometimes. Like, we've got to be ready to lose power, to get by, to rely on our neighbors and that sort of thing. Not that everyone loves each other or anything like that, but people are kind of prepared in a different way. And so if you are in the city, you can get more prepared. But I would encourage, I mean, as a lifestyle, I think it's important to look at where are we going? Who's going to survive and who's going to thrive? And the people who are in cities that are burning down right now, I feel for you. I've lived in cities. I lived in DC for like 2 years to pay off my loans. And there are wonderful things about cities. I love the people. As a musician, I love playing in cities. It's the best scenes in a lot of ways. But if you're looking to survive, I would suggest that you try to go camping and like test a few things out, get to know how it works, and maybe take a look at a place where you could possibly bug out to if you had to, because hopefully it doesn't get to that point. Hopefully this isn't as bad as it seems, because it seems like the media is definitely showing all the fear-based stuff and all the violence. They're not showing the peaceful protests when all these people are on one knee together, or having moments of silence together, being nonviolent. You're not seeing that stuff. It's happening all over the place though. Like, people are
Yeah.
doing this together, and that's what we should be seeing. So I think that there's a way out of this, and it starts by all coming together, and maybe a bit of non-action is good too. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't mean that we need to be it certainly doesn't mean that we should ever have any violence against the police force or against the military or against the politicians. I don't believe in any of that and would never condone that. But coming together is something we need to do, whether we're in cities or in bumfuck middle of nowhere, which
Yeah.
has its own, it sounds great to everyone. That sounds great. but it's also, it comes with its own risks too. Being out in the middle of nowhere, it's not like you're completely safe. You're really not. So you have to figure
Yeah.
that out too.
Yeah. Lost my train of thought. Apologies. I was like,
Where do you want to go next, Mike?
I don't know.
Maybe should we look at the comments?
Maybe the comments is a good place to go. Well, the feed is going to my personal Facebook as well as the business fan page. We got a few
Let's see what
comments
we got here.
personal.
Be nice to us, folks.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying anything nasty. They actually like us.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Chris says absolutely self-reliance has disappeared from our current way of life. That is such an awesome point, Chris. Something that used to be a part of being American, right? Like that's one of the things that having read the novels that I did and getting the education that I had, that's my impression of what it means to be American is self-reliance and being, yes, like individualism is part of it, but it's not like the founding fathers were all in this for themselves. Like they did some shit together too. And that's what I think America is all about.
Yeah. I think I was talking to the CEO of Aleco, Eric Blomberg, last week, and he's in Sweden. So he's Swedish, and they have one of the things that really struck me in that conversation is they're considered a socialist way of doing things. Yeah. And when you go there, it's amazing, right?
Yeah. I haven't been to Sweden, but I've heard that. Yeah.
And he even brought this up. It's funny because I've brought this point up before, and when people start going, we should do our health system like, these, like Sweden or these other countries, I'm like, well, hang on a second. Yeah. There's not that many people there, and they're very much alike. Like it's a lot of the same type of it's not that, it's just a few million, and there's not a lot of variety of human there, right?
Yeah.
And so it can work there the way it's working. And yeah, he even brought up, it's like, look, we're a small country, not a lot of variety. Like trying to do in the US what we're doing here may not be the best idea.
Right.
But one of the things that really struck me was he was talking about how Sweden doesn't do, they didn't do the lockdown like a lot of other countries did. And, they caught some flack over that. And we'll see the numbers, it'll be another year or two before maybe we'll get to see some truth. But he talked about the level of personal responsibility that exists in that culture. And so that's actually one of the problems I'm seeing in American culture right now is there is, on one side, people are saying, I want freedom. I want like truth and freedom.
Yeah.
But on the other side, no personal responsibility.
Right.
And they just, please just take care of me. And so the politicians are going to save them. They think you can tell someone might go, I don't think that, it's full of shit. Because people, you can tell that someone wants someone to save them when they get hyped up about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? If they really love or hate politicians, if they're like, fuck that guy, this guy is so much better. I'm like, you have just created a savior in your mind.
Yes.
And when you're putting when you have a savior, when you start putting people on pedestals and someone's gonna like, finally someone's gonna come make a change, then you then automatically have to put yourself as a victim or a villain. And nobody's the villain. No one, I'm not a villain. So now I'm the victim. So now I have no personal responsibility. I have a victim mentality. I need a savior, someone from outside to come and get me. So I like to warn people of like, one of the biggest issues with this is there's a lack of personal responsibility. People don't want to find, and they're terrified of the truth, right?
Yeah.
They don't want to know. People will listen to this and go, they'll say things like, oh, these guys don't know what they're talking about, or they're crazy or whatever. And it's like, it's a lack, even if we're wrong, the emotional response of dismissal when the first thing we say that triggers you means that you are not looking, you don't care. And it's, I think that is really that's one of the core issues that we're witnessing with the human race right now, and especially
Yeah.
Americans.
And it's okay to disagree. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like one of the reasons I like you, Mike, and the people who you hang out with is because you're different from me in so many ways, and so are they. And we learn from each other. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's one of the beautiful things about it. I don't want you to just like lay down to everything that I say and agree with me. The whole point is that, you know, that's like playing basketball and letting the other person win every time. It's like if you're sparring, you've got to fight back and forth to get through this and figure things out. And that's kind of how I see this. And so I hate social media most of the time. I really do. And I try to stay away from it. But recently I've been getting after it and making these posts that are a little bit inflammatory sometimes, but I think are really important to make a stand right now and say, I will not let this happen. I see this happening, and this will not continue. People are watching you now, you know, and sometimes I'll say things and then people flame me back, and then I engage with them. And most of the times they're either bots, they disappear, or most of the time we become friends. That's how I originally became friends with the carnivore people, because I was just like, fuck you guys using carnivore as a word. Unless you're never drinking coffee, you're never eating cheese, and like this other stuff. Like there's gray area there on the carnivore thing. It's just like you're using words wrong, and I don't like that, because that fucked up paleo, that fucks up keto, that fucks up vegan and plant-based and all this. These words are not helping anybody. Paul Saladino is the man. I love this guy, and like he's totally cool. I had him on my show. I've made friends with a lot of carnivore people, but what I realized when they started flaming me for something, which I don't even remember what it was, and there are a lot of carnivore people right now. I was like, oh, you're the people.
Yeah, because I thought it was silly in the beginning.
Yeah, no, it's just,
I thought it was silly in the beginning, and then after I understood it, I go, oh, and I can see. I'm like, I hope it becomes more popular.
It's kind of like what paleo, the meat-based paleo turned into. You know what I mean? It's like the only people left who are eating organ meats, like me and my wife have been for fucking 10 plus years now, are the carnivore people. It's not the people who are using like a lot of these other terms anymore and eating all these fat bombs and getting these keto products and stuff. So it evolves and it changes, but these words can become really annoying. For me, you know, as a musician, artist, writer for most of my career, I'm really territorial about some words. So I respectfully disagree with the way that most people call themselves carnivore, and it's not my place to really, but people ask me about it, and that's fine. We just all need to be okay with that. You know what I mean? And then like, I think it's also okay. So, all right, carnivores, it's okay to like eat a little bit of vegetables sometimes. It's okay to drink a little coffee. Like your world will not end. You know what I mean? And vegan plant-based people, because like I get flamed for calling vegans plant-based and plant-based vegans, and there's definitely a difference there, and I don't give a fuck. But those people need to be okay every once in a while, even if it's an accident. If you eat a little bit of egg or a little bit of cheese, that's okay too. If there's a little bit of honey in your tea, okay, take a deep breath. We can get past this, because the way that we survive is by we have to focus on health as a survival strategy. And you are a health nut if you're vegan, and you are a health nut if you're carnivore. I don't care what you call it. You guys need to come together and appreciate your differences, because you're going to learn from each other. And you might even like eat a little meat or like have a little vegan food, and that's okay.
Yeah. I love hanging out with extremists, and and you know, ideology and extremism usually, you know, kind of go hand in hand, and that's, we can just say ideology is I heard something recently I really liked was the difference between ideology and ideas is that an ideology is concrete. You know, I have this idea and I believe it no matter what. Having an idea means it can come and it can go. It's, and holding an ideology can be damaging. But damn, I don't. You know what? I had a fun weekend. I'll admit it.
It's the altitude, man. You're not acclimated yet.
It's the altitude. I made some friends this weekend. It was a good time. Where are we going with that? Oh yeah, I love the extremists because like I learned so much about some of the things you mentioned before, spirulina, chlorella, like, things that are considered superfoods. I know that using the word superfoods can trigger some people, but
Yeah, it does.
like the vegan crowd illuminated so much for me. Like, oh, you
Yes,
can
they're
find,
awesome.
and I was like, dude, man, I love eating a vegan meal with a piece of meat on top, and it's just it's the best way to go.
I agree with you.
But then you look at carnivore, it's like, yeah, that's really extreme. I'm not going to take it on 100%. But you know what? More organ meat in my diet. That's what I
Yes,
learned, like, from
totally.
Paul. I'm like,
Yep.
dude, yeah, it's silly that I'm not getting more organ meat. And not only that, organ meat's cheap because no one
Way
wants it.
cheaper.
I got a
Way cheaper.
bunch of organ meat that they were going to throw out,
Yeah. They'll
and
give it
the
to you for free
butcher's
a lot
just
of the
throwing it
time.
out. I got the
Yep.
last, I got a heart, liver, and I think a spleen for free. It's just like,
Yeah.
here's a bunch
Happens
of
to
meat.
us
I'm
all
like,
the time.
what the fuck
And
is
if it's a
going
little
on?
gamey, because sometimes it's a little gamey, we just give that to the dog and she loves it.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, words, like you were saying before, words are important, and
Yeah.
there's a lack of people don't people are using words and they don't know what they mean.
Yeah.
And
Or they disagree about what they're talking about.
yeah, and there's a lot of things where when I start getting a conversation, I find myself getting caught up at times where I'm like, I feel the emotional charge coming up, and I like start getting the argument mode. And I go, whoa, 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 whoa. I'm getting argument mode. This is not a good sign.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I can back up and go, there's this word that we're circling in this conversation. I wonder if we agree on the definition and the meaning of that word.
Yeah.
And a lot of times bring that word up and go, oh, it's not even applicable to this conversation.
Yeah.
Like, what would be a more, so finding more accuracy. It's like, okay, how can we have more accuracy? Is what's going to help create a better conversation.
And maybe moving the conversations away from things that are always divisive. Like I was in a play in high school that took place in 1968, and they talked about abortion and how it was all figured out. And it's like, even that one word, well, what a trigger word that is, right? No
Oh
one
yeah.
will ever be okay with even that word or that concept 100%. You know what I mean? That will always be divisive. There are certain terms like that, like affirmative action is kind of similar, white privilege. These are words that like you can bring up, but as soon as you start a conversation around it, especially on social media, people start throwing these ad hominem attacks against each other. They get nasty immediately. They start projecting all this shit. And people have called me all sorts of things in the past few weeks, which is really revealing what they call me, because I'm getting flamed from both sides. I'm being called like a Trumper and like someone who hates Trump and everything in between, and someone who's an anarchist who thinks, that all government should go away. And I'm being flamed for all these things at the same time. And I'm just like, wow, look at you guys go. What are you talking about? Like that, you're putting a lot of words in my mouth.
I had a handful of people attack me for being an anti-vaxxer, and I've never said I was an anti-vaxxer.
Same.
Not one word. I was being highly promotional of. I was like, we should maybe take our focus off of a vaccine to solve this problem and maybe look at health.
Maybe
And
so. Yeah.
yeah, it's like maybe. And I had people get pissed, that I would suggest that living a healthier lifestyle would would help you avoid getting coronavirus, or avoid you
Yeah,
from
you're not
dying
allowed
from
to say that.
coronavirus. I'm
You're
like,
not
you
allowed
are.
to say that.
And I think, yeah, just I go and look at these people. I'm going, who the fuck believes this?
They might be bots. There are so many bots who are doing this and automatically commenting just hateful shit
Well,
on both sides
this is.
that you have to watch out for too.
I get really curious. This one guy I got into it with, he his whole thing. I think he was a high school teacher, and his sister-in-law or something like that was a nurse at a local children's hospital. And I guess I was challenging what he had heard from her. And so I got in a conversation with him, and he goes, well, she's a nurse at this children's hospital, so she probably knows more of this about you, so I'm going to listen to her. And I'm going, huh, okay. That's where people want, give credibility to authority. And if you're not wearing a lab coat, or you're not in a uniform, or
Those people are
whatever.
also wearing a muzzle, though. People need to know that.
Which people are wearing a muzzle?
A lot of people who are working in the traditional health and medical system.
Oh, yeah.
If you have letters after your name, there is a lot you're not allowed to talk about, never allowed to say, have an opinion on publicly. That's one of the reasons I don't have many letters after my name, is because it comes with boundaries. And yes, you get education there, but you also paint yourself into a corner. And you know, a lot of people are aware of this, but many people are not. And so that was another big thing that has happened. I grew up with people working in hospitals all around me, you know, and my grandmother was a nurse, my mom a nurse practitioner, and in the medical system for her pretty much her whole career. And it's gnarly. It's gnarlier than ever. Someone tweeted at me their bill because their wife works as a medical professional, and the cost of their coronavirus test, which was, you know, mandatory, was $18,000. And like, we've got the receipt. Go look at my Twitter right now. Like, we tweeted about it. There's a big thread, and it's like, this is what we cannot let happen anymore. This is a system that is leeching off of the people, especially the people who don't have money. They're using tax dollars to do this. They're using printed money to do this. They're controlling us more while doing this and taking advantage of us. And I've been doing my show for 10 plus years because I was taken advantage of by my doctor and by the traditional medical system, who thought they had good advice to give me about diet and nutrition. And it turns out they didn't. And it turns out I got really sick when I followed that advice.
What advice did you take that got you sick?
Eat low fat, eat very low cholesterol foods, keep running. And that was the main stuff, was keeping it carb based and following the low fat propaganda that they were selling me back then, which is thankfully, you know, been thrown under the bus pretty hard recently, and people believe it less. Some people still believe it, but it was very problematic for me to follow the dietary advice that came from that doctor. Then I got fat, sick, high triglycerides. My thyroid stopped working. I was falling apart in my early 20s. So I was pissed enough to start up my podcast and say, look at this bullshit all around us. The powers that be are giving us the food pyramid, indoctrinating us with the wrong information, and they're doing it to the medical industry too. We all deserve better than this. We need to have long form conversations with people who know what the fuck they're talking about from a bunch of different domains, not just people with letters after their names, who are important and know a lot of stuff, but also other people with N=1 experience from all over the world and all different walks of life. Because like, yeah, I mean, you can learn from listening to a doctor, but you can learn a hell of a lot from talking to a bunch of people who have lost 100 plus pounds or 200 plus pounds or 300 plus pounds and kept it off for 10, 15 years. Like, yeah, you can learn a lot from those people too, even if they aren't MDs, you know? And so it's very important that we recognize that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was just hanging out with somebody this past weekend where they work in psychology, but inside of the like mainstream medical system.
Yeah.
And you know, she was just sharing like, yeah, there's limitations. You can't suggest certain things. You can't even bring it up, or you'll lose your license.
You lose your license.
And which means that if you're a licensed medical professional, you're not incentivized to learn anything new.
Mm-mm.
You're not incentivized to go look, because what's it fucking matter? You can't.
It's too risky. You could lose your job
suggest
for learning things.
And for instance, my one friend, Lynn Marie Morsky, she left the medical. She's an MD, and she left medicine partly because she couldn't dig into and be a proponent for plant medicine. Because she's like, well,
because it's illegal.
she goes, I could lose my license over this. So one thing she did, she created a lifestyle where she did not need her medical license to make money.
Right.
So now she runs the Plant Medicine podcast, which is amazing. And just a really one of the most solid resources there is for that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And an MD telling you about plant. I mean, here's the thing: it's like it's bad enough if they're telling you to take CBD. You better not ever mention psilocybin mushrooms or
Mm-hmm.
ayahuasca as a medical professional. Yeah, these things are starting to get traction because enough people are saying it fucking saved my life or changed my life in such a positive way.
Yeah.
But it's not being driven by the medical community. The people that are supposed to be there to help us heal
Yeah.
are the ones that are the most behind.
They won't even give us sovereignty over our own minds. Think about
Right.
how scary that is. Mushrooms grow on fucking cow shit right over there.
Yeah.
They grow on
Yeah.
cow shit all across the world. They grow in your front yard. It's illegal to eat them. San Pedro cactus, similar deal. You know, you can't eat a cactus. Even though weed is legal, it's not legal. We're medical patients, have been for years.
Yeah.
CBD is an incredible healing tool. Not the only one, obviously, but we have really found a lot of benefit in CBD in many different ways over the years.
CBD has
And
been one of my favorite. If I'm feeling stressed, if I'm like, okay, I'm like day 2 or 3 into some stress, or I went and did a physical activity and went and ran a Spartan race and beat myself up a bit, dude, CBD, like
yeah,
it helps bring everything down and calm down and start rejuvenating.
so I'm not saying that all of these plant medicines are the answer. You
Right.
have to do work there. It's not a vacation and it's not a free lunch either. You have to like you undo your brain and then you have to put it back together. You really do. And people can lose their shit. You can have mental breakdown. I've seen a lot of people go to some dark places. So I think there is a lot of people who are just like gung ho about it right now. And I can understand that because it has been kind of buried for so long, these different things. I think
Yeah.
we should all demand more sovereignty over our ability to choose whether or not we want to participate in plant medicine and do it the right way, but it shouldn't be in the underground anymore. I think
No.
it should be in clinical places. It should be in used for research. And now that's starting to happen. So I do think that's encouraging, but I mean, like the fact that after, I think I went
So it
into my
only took
first,
50 years.
right, exactly.
It's like
And
that.
it's
There,
absurd, man.
yeah, it's been 50 years of people trying to get this information out, it being
Yeah.
suppressed, war on drugs. And then 50, 60 years, 60 years. It's been 60 years. It's not moving fast. Um, but one of the big issues with plant medicine, especially plant medicine that is psychedelic in nature, is there's been a lack of elders in the space. So if you go to a
Yes.
culture where psychedelics are common, you go down to South America or uh, places in Europe where psychedelic medicine is just part of the culture.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they don't have people don't lose their shit and
Right.
get confused and
Right.
all of this because it's part of the culture. And there's elders to say, okay, I understand that you ate 5 grams of mushrooms and you may think you're Jesus Christ for a week, but you're not. And
Here's some
like,
soup.
there's just here's some soup. But there's we have a Western mind that we've inherited, and there's a way of thinking, and psychedelics can be very challenging to the type of thinking that we inherited. So that challenge can bring up some issues.
Yeah.
And this is why it's good to have trained people to be there as the elders, like you're talking about, is let's embrace it and work with it. There's just I was in Colombia back in January, and I was drinking yahe, which is very similar to ayahuasca. And there was a woman there that she had just found this place online somehow and showed up, had uh, no really great training on how to manage the mind. Most people, when I say that, they don't know what I'm talking about. But once you've gotten into the work of actually organizing and managing the mind and having a different relationship with your mind and not thinking that you are your mind or believing that,
Mm-hmm.
um, she didn't have any of those tools going in. And uh, I'm thankful I was there. I was able to work with her for hours the day after ceremony because she did not manage it well, but we were able to make some progress. So there are, yeah, you're right. It's not, plant medicine isn't the solution.
Mhm.
And it's a nice tool that we should be using in conjunction with uh just more advanced I guess say psychology work. And that's
Yeah.
a problem with psychology right now is like come in for an hour of talk therapy. Okay. Like they're not actually being trained how to manage the
No.
mind better. It's just like I'm gonna give you a little bit of relief. Here's some
Yeah.
Xanax,
Yep.
or why don't you just tell me about your problems? And then this way you'll get it off your chest. And the next week you'll tell me about your problems again.
Yeah. But you'll be medicated now.
For
So
sure.
we have a business model, right?
Yeah.
I studied and I was pre-med for a little bit, but then I really doubled down on psychology. But I decided not to go into psychiatry or psychology because the initial training that I had in that gave me a book, the DSM-V, with basically descriptions of things that were wrong with people and then drugs that are attached to those things. And I'm just like, this is pretty fucked up. This is not science. You're not doing any research here. Like, I'm out. And not that there aren't good psychologists and psychiatrists. Obviously, there are many ways to make this work, but drugging people up, like we were literally just saying about plant medicine, is not the answer.
Right. Yeah. Much deeper than that.
Yeah.
Where do we go? Where do we go from here, Abel?
Well, I think it's important. One of the things that I'm doing is kind of like rallying the people around me, whether they're in different countries or not, and being like, are you willing to stand up now too? Because one of the coolest things is like I've never gotten more hate than in the past few weeks when I've really been speaking up about things, but I've never seen more people get my back.
Nice.
And when I take that heat and people see it over and over again, eventually like they step up, and I've seen them start saying things and standing up for what they believe in. And while we might not believe exactly the same things, that's awesome, because I want you out there talking with me, talking with Mike, and joining together with other people who are trying to be a part of the solution instead of waiting for a savior. And I'll just say, like, I don't want to get political, but I think it's really important to acknowledge that. And this actually happened, I think the last time, or one of the last times I was physically with you at your mastermind out in San Diego, was when we learned that Trump was going to be elected president. And I was like, no, that's no way. And everyone who was there is just like, no fucking way, at the beginning of those few days. And then by the time I left, we're all just like, oh shit, like this is happening, right?
Oh, he's a master influencer. It
Right.
became obvious. Yeah.
Right.
Still, man, I would say I trigger people when I say this. It's like the guy's a fucking genius.
I think
And
it's okay to say that.
it should be okay to say that because he is a master of influence. He's a genius influencer. I'm
Just
not
like every evil genius in the movies, you know,
I'm
it's
not
like
I'm
they
not
can be
saying
smart too.
I'm not saying, I'm not pro or anti-Trump. I'm curious is what
Exactly.
I am. I'm
Exactly.
curious because I'm watching what he's saying and I'm going, what's the intention? Because people
Right.
think he's just throwing words around. He's not. He has really deep NLP training. He understands marketing. He understands how the world works in a lot of ways at a much higher level. The people that are calling Trump an idiot are tend to, they may be talking about one aspect of Trump, which I
Yeah.
get, but
Yeah.
but when people immediately are like, I don't want to hear anything,
Yeah.
I'm going, oh, you're you're assuming that he's just throwing words out there and he's getting lucky. It's like, no, that's not what's happening. Like the fourth grade reading level tweets are on purpose.
Yeah.
The way he deals with the press is, well, hilarious and on purpose. It's fascinating.
Yeah. So for me, I was like, I think he's a despicable human being. I think he's Jabba the Hutt. I think he's a monster. Um, I there's a role that's being played here. That's for sure. But one of the and I was just like, from the beginning, based on him being a monster, and he's not the only monster in politics. I think they're all usually monsters, or at least sociopaths, who are in it for themselves. Like, so for that, I was very much just like anti, and most people around me were anti-Trump the whole time. And what I've seen recently is people just like foaming at the mouth, coming at me, for asking questions about whether the election is the thing that we really need to be focusing on right now compared to finding other solutions. And they're calling me a Trumper and anti-Trumper and all these other things. And other people are saying, we need to get him out of office at all costs. And he's the most evil thing in the world. And I don't care if it's a fucking cucumber, put that in the office if it's not him. And it's like, I don't think that's critical thinking, you know, because here's the problem with that. There are monsters bigger than this guy. You know what I mean? There are monsters far bigger than this guy. And I'm not saying it's the political candidates either. I think we're kind of at risk of experiencing a coup right now. We don't know if it's the good guys or the bad guys. There's the big soup, a big combination of all this shit. But anyone who's saying that we should elect cucumbers or elect whoever instead of this guy needs to realize that that's a problem too. I'm not saying I'm for Trump. I'm not saying I'm against Trump. I don't even know if I'm going to vote, to be perfectly honest. The last time I fucking voted, my dad gets really mad at me when I say this, was at a grocery store called Randall's in Texas. And I didn't believe in the person I was voting for. I voted for that person because I would rather elect a cucumber. And we tried that, you know what I mean? And so for me and you, we're old enough to be getting kind of old, but we're still young. And we have too much time left on this planet to just make dumb decisions or elect clowns for another 4 or 8 years, especially anyone in the establishment. You know what I mean? It's time. We have to stand up and demand for something better, or just demand for the federal government to be fucking dissolved. You know what I mean? And work on state governments and work on some sort of different solution to this, because our world is burning. Like that used to be a figure of speech. Look around. It's happening everywhere now. This is where we are. If you want more of this, keep voting for the establishment people. You know what I mean? Like the only options that have been presented to us are establishment. And that's not what we want anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting. I tell people that I'm not that interested in voting for the president. Yeah, people do definitely get pissed about that. But I go, the fact that you think there's an actual choice happening this is where having a level of understanding is where like sitting and reading and studying and watching and paying attention and becomes critical, because you reach a level of understanding. It's like, I used to love politics. I used to like get really into it. And then there was a moment where it's like the veil was lifted from my eyes and I go, oh, like, we're not choosing the people that are running. Right. They gave us this person or this person.
Yep.
And I've heard people say that, and I heard people say that long before it really landed for me. And I was like, well, yeah, kind of, like, I get it. And then there was a moment where I go, oh, like, people are running the media. The media is choosing who the president is. We're being told, we're being programmed. It's crazy.
I had someone put it to me.
Oh, I have a choice. Yeah.
So here's the choice that was presented to me. You have a choice. That's like being in elementary school and your mom being like, do you want a red popsicle or a blue one? That's the choice that we have right now. It really is. And now we don't even get fucking recess anymore.
That's true.
And the way that I see it, honestly, is that the people in power right now dropped a fucking baby on its head in front of everybody. And they should not get away with this, because people are dying, and they're not dying of the things that the media is saying they're dying from. You know what I mean? Like, people are dying. I have a lot of friends with mental health issues, and the toll on mental health that this has already taken on everybody. This is going to change generations. This is going to change our children forever. We're going to be digging out of this for years, you know, even if it gets better right now. And so we have to acknowledge that, and we have to do something better than this. And maybe it's just giving more power to your communities around you locally, as well as your communities who are just out there and kind of people who you can be friendly with and have long form conversations with in whatever form you can. Like, we need to rally together, spend our time doing that, spend our time reading books, because you just can't. Yes, you want to keep up on what's happening, and the internet can be okay for current events, but it's also a shitstorm. You never know what's happening when it's going down. But there are many great books out there And if we lose the grid, you're going to need them. You know, I don't know. I'm not confident that I could butcher an animal, but we've got like 4 books about it. So, you know, and similar for a lot of these other things, it's like, start getting ready for this now. And worst case scenario in your own life, you'll build some skills and be prepared and more self-reliant, and you can help educate other people in your community who want to learn these skills. That's really cool. You know, it's like, we're surrounded by pine nuts, and like half the people don't even know it.
And here's the thing for the guys out there, for all the men, even if you don't have to use these skills, having these skills and putting them to use is very attractive to women. Women
That's
love
a good
it.
point.
Yeah.
Because they know, you know, instinctively that survival is important, and so is safety. And these things kind of go hand in hand. And if you like, would you rather stand next to someone who's sick and unhealthy or weak in whatever way? Or if that person has the option, would you rather stand next to someone who is self-reliant, has skills, you know, is able to be strong and push and pull things, move things around, help protect you? Like, let's all do this together. Let's help each other, whether you're vegan or carnivore or have different political beliefs. Like, we can all do this. And believe me, the media is not helping anymore. The government doesn't seem to be helping anymore. They can turn it around, and I hope they do, but they're not helping us right now. And as the longer they don't help us, the closer we are to the whole thing just falling apart.
All right, I think we'll leave it there. Anything else you want? Any parting words you want? We're over an hour and a half. This is one of the longer shows I've done. It's been a lot of fun.
Right on, man. Yeah, I love talking to you. The easiest way to find me is to go to fatburningman.com. My name is Abel James. You can find me on social media, but I am buried and censored and shadow banned, just like the rest of the people out there who aren't billionaires. And my new book is called Designer Babies Still Get Scabies. It's an audio book as well. You can find that at designerbabiesbook.com. And I just started up a new Patreon community. So I'm doing some coaching there for coaches, small businesses. People are having a really hard time. So I'm happy to help. We've been like surviving online for 10 plus years now, trying to make all this work in many different ways. It's always an uphill battle, but I've been really enjoying getting in touch with people all over the world recently. So if you're out there and you want to get in touch, I'm super available in the next few weeks, especially because we're locked down, and it's a good time to try to figure all this shit out together. You know, we have to.
Thanks for coming on today, Abel. And
thanks for having
sharing,
me.
Putting it out there.
Rant.
we're both gonna catch some shit for this. So
we always do, man.
Yeah.
We always do. Well, at least we have each other's back.
That's right. That's right.